The late afternoon sun spilled through the curtains, catching the dust in the air like frozen sparks. I sat cross-legged on the floor, Dad's old leather briefcase resting beside me. One by one, I pulled out envelopes, letters, and papers, running my fingertips over the grooves of his handwriting. Every loop, every stroke felt like a quiet conversation with him, like he was still here guiding me. But then my eyes landed on something that jolted me: the inheritance document. And the signature at the bottom looked wrong. My chest tightened as I slid one of his old letters beside it. I had watched Dad sign everything my whole life: school slips, checks, even birthday cards. His R always had this confident flourish, a loop that carried his steady hand. But here? The R was stiff, clumsy, almost mechanical. I whispered into the silence, my voice breaking as the truth pressed down on me. This isn't Dad's handwriting. He never made his R like that. The words felt like a blade twisting inside me. Grief and anger collided, rising up like a storm I couldn't contain. Betrayal stung at the back of my throat, though I didn't even have the full picture yet. My hand shook as I reached for my phone, heart hammering with each unanswered ring. "Pick up, Sophia," I muttered under my breath. When she didn't, I hit call again, this time with fury hardening my tone. And the moment she finally answered, I didn't give her room to breathe. "Sophia?" I snapped the moment her voice came through, too calm, too casual. "I need to see you. Now. At Dad's house." I could hear her pause, a flicker of hesitation before she answered. "What's the rush, Alyssa? Can't it wait?" That fake sweetness in her tone made my skin crawl. My grip on the phone tightened, my breath steadying with sheer will. "No, I found something, and you'd better hope I'm wrong." Silence stretched between us, thick as smoke. I imagined her standing in her spotless kitchen, her lips curling into that little smile she used whenever she thought she had the upper hand. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, I'll come. But you sound ridiculous, Alyssa. You're just tired. Grief does strange things to people." Her words were carefully measured, each one dipped in poison. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Not yet. I hung up before she could say anything else, staring at the document spread across the floor. My father's true signature sat beside the forgery, a silent testimony of betrayal. The house felt colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves carried secrets I hadn't unearthed yet. I pushed myself up, legs trembling, determination slowly overpowering fear. Tonight, I would face her, and no matter how much she tried to dismiss me, I wasn't backing down. By the time I gathered the papers and slipped them back into the briefcase, my hands had steadied. Anger had a way of sharpening me, clearing the fog that grief had left behind. I walked through the hallway toward the front door, each step echoing against the hardwood, reminding me of nights when Dad would pace while thinking. Tonight, though, it was my turn to carry his weight. I wasn't just his daughter anymore. I was his defender. The drive to his house felt endless. Streetlights blurred past, casting long shadows over the steering wheel I gripped too tight. My mind spun with images of Sophia's smug face, her voice laced with condescension. She had always wanted control, always tested the boundaries of loyalty. But forging Dad's signature? That was no longer sibling rivalry. That was theft. And it demanded a reckoning. As I pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight of Dad's porch light flickered against the night sky. I sat for a moment, staring at the glow, almost expecting him to step outside like he used to. Instead, I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and whispered to myself, "Dad, I'm not letting her get away with this." My heart pounded as I reached for the briefcase. The stage for our confrontation was set. I was already inside Dad's study when Sophia arrived, her heels clicking sharply against the wooden floor. The room smelled faintly of old books and cedar, a scent that always reminded me of him. I stood behind his desk, the inheritance document spread out like a weapon waiting to be used. She stepped in with that same cool expression, her arms folded as if she'd come to a casual meeting. But I could see the flicker of unease in her eyes when they landed on the papers. "Explain this, Sophia," I demanded, my voice low but firm. I tapped the signature with my finger, each thud echoing like a drumbeat of accusation. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? This isn't Dad's signature." She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms tighter. "You're imagining things," she said, her tone dripping with mock pity. "Grief is clouding your judgment." The words sliced into me, but they only fueled my fire. I slammed my hand on the desk, the sound snapping through the quiet study. "Don't gaslight me," I shot back, my voice cracking with rage. I grew up watching him sign everything. I know his hand better than anyone. For the first time, her lips curled into a cold smile, the mask slipping just enough to reveal the truth beneath. "So what if I did?" she said softly, almost taunting. "You were always the golden child. For once, I wanted it all." Her words hit me like a slap, but strangely I didn't flinch. For the first time, I saw her clearly, not as my sister, not as the girl who once shared secrets with me under the covers, but as someone who had just admitted to betraying our father. My voice dropped, quieter now, but sharper than before. "You stood by his bed when he was dying. You promised him you'd honor his wishes. And then you turned around and stole from him." Sophia tilted her head, unfazed, as if the truth carried no weight. "Don't be so dramatic, Alyssa. Dad always favored you. You had his love, his attention. I just wanted the rest." "Why shouldn't I?" The casual cruelty in her tone made my stomach twist. This wasn't jealousy anymore. It was greed, naked and unapologetic. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, grounding me in the moment. I shook my head slowly, forcing myself to breathe. "You didn't just take from me," I said, my throat tight. "You tried to erase him, his legacy, his voice." The room felt suffocating, the walls pressing in on us, carrying the weight of Dad's memory. Sophia shrugged, as if none of it mattered, her smile razor-thin. "Legacies are written by the ones who win," she murmured. And in that instant, I knew. I couldn't walk away. I felt my whole body trembling, not from fear, but from the raw fury burning through me. Sophia leaned back against the shelves like she owned the room, like Dad's study was already hers. My chest tightened as I looked at her, remembering the nights we laughed together in this very space, reading his books aloud as children. How could the same sister I once held hands with in the dark be standing here now, confessing she had stolen from us both? Her arrogance only deepened the silence that followed. I gathered the documents, slid them carefully back into the folder, and shut the briefcase with a decisive snap. The sound made her flinch just barely, but it was enough to tell me she wasn't as untouchable as she wanted me to believe. "This isn't over," I said firmly, holding her gaze. "You think you've won, but you've already lost. You just don't know it yet." Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked out, my heels striking the floor like a countdown. The air outside was cold and sharp, but it filled my lungs with clarity. Sophia thought she had buried the truth, but she had no idea what I was about to unleash. My hands steadied on the steering wheel as I started the car. The confrontation was done, but the battle for Dad's legacy had only just begun. The next morning, I found myself sitting in the quiet office of my father's old lawyer, the scent of polished wood and faint cigar smoke lingering in the air. I had barely slept, my mind replaying Sophia's smug smile over and over, each time pushing me closer to the edge. When he walked in, gray suit, glasses perched low on his nose, something in me steadied. This was the man Dad had trusted with his affairs, and now it was my turn to trust him too. I laid the inheritance papers on his desk, my hands firm this time, no hesitation. "I need you to look at this," I said, my voice steady but vibrating with the weight of what I knew. He studied the signature, his brow furrowing as his pen tapped against the desk. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope I had been keeping for years. The one Dad had pressed into my hands with a seriousness that haunted me now. The private letter. The one he'd told me never to lose. "This," I said, sliding it across the desk, "is my card up my sleeve." The lawyer opened it carefully, adjusting his glasses as his eyes scanned the words. My heart pounded as I waited, but I already knew what he would find. Dad's true voice, his real wishes, his signature, notarized, impossible to dispute. And as the lawyer's gaze lifted to mine, a flicker of recognition passed between us. This was the turning point. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking as he adjusted his glasses once more. "Alyssa," he said slowly, his voice deliberate, "if this letter is notarized, it's admissible in court. Your father's wishes will hold." The air in the room shifted, like a weight lifting just enough for me to take a full breath. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It is notarized. Dad knew Sophia too well. He even warned me once. If she tries to cheat, protect my legacy." Saying those words aloud made my chest tighten, but it also lit a fire inside me. The lawyer set the letter down carefully, as if it were a sacred object. His eyes softened, but his tone grew sharper. "Then we'll let her think she's safe. Until the hearing. She won't see this coming." I felt a surge of relief and vengeance collide, almost dizzying. For weeks, I had felt powerless, drowning in grief while Sophia played her games. But now I had something solid. Proof. A weapon. I sat up straighter, my palms pressed flat against my knees. "Good," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "She's always underestimated me, but this time she won't." The lawyer gave a firm nod, his lips curving into the faintest smile of reassurance. My heart still ached for Dad, but I knew he'd prepared me for this exact moment. For the first time since his death, I felt him at my side. Not as a memory, but as a force guiding me forward. When I finally left the office, the afternoon sky was heavy with gray clouds, the kind that promised a storm. I clutched the briefcase to my side, the weight of the notarized letter inside grounding me with every step. Sophia thought she had outsmarted everyone, thought she could rewrite Dad's story to fit her greed. But what she didn't know was that he had trusted me with his truth long before she ever made her move. That trust burned like a beacon inside me, guiding every decision. Driving home, I replayed the moment Dad had handed me the envelope. His hand was frail, but his eyes were steady, piercing into mine with a kind of urgency I hadn't understood until now. "Promise me you'll keep this safe," he had said, his voice low but firm. And I had promised, never imagining I'd need it so soon. That memory rose now like armor, reminding me that this fight wasn't just mine, it was ours. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the first drops of rain hit the windshield, tapping out a rhythm that matched the beat of my heart. I stepped out of the car, clutching the letter close, and felt the storm break open above me. Let her think she had won. Let her walk into that hearing full of confidence. Because when the truth finally hit her, it would be like lightning splitting the sky, sudden, undeniable, and impossible to escape. The courthouse smelled of polished marble and nerves. I sat at the long wooden table, the documents stacked neatly before me, my hands folded to keep them from trembling. Across the room, Sophia strolled in like she was walking a runway, chin high, lips painted in a victorious smile. She looked at me once, just once, and I could see it in her eyes. She thought she'd already won. My heart pounded, but instead of fear, it was anticipation, sharp and electric. The judge entered, the gavel striking, and the hearing began. Sophia's lawyer wasted no time, his voice smooth as he declared her the rightful heir, the sole beneficiary of our father's estate. I watched her smirk as he spoke, her fingers drumming lightly on the table like a queen waiting to be crowned. It made my blood boil, but I stayed still, calm, because I knew something she didn't. My turn was coming. When it was finally our side's chance, my father's lawyer rose with a quiet authority that filled the room. He laid the notarized letter before the judge as if he were setting down a royal decree. The papers whispered as they unfolded, revealing Dad's true words. My stomach clenched, my throat tightening, but I didn't look away. This was it, the moment Dad's voice would cut through Sophia's lies and shatter her illusion of control. Sophia leaned forward, her voice sharp, almost shrill. "The will is clear. Everything is mine." She sounded so certain, so untouchable, that a murmur rippled through the courtroom. I felt my pulse quicken, but I stayed seated, waiting for the moment I had carried for weeks. With steady hands, I slid the handwriting analysis across the table to our lawyer, watching as he handed it to the judge. My breath caught in my chest. This was the strike. The judge scanned the pages slowly, eyebrows arching as the silence stretched heavy in the air. Sophia shifted in her seat, her smirk faltering, the first crack in her flawless mask. "Not quite," I said, my voice clear and steady, surprising even me. I rose and faced her, holding her gaze as the words poured out. "Here's Dad's real wish, notarized, and here's an expert report confirming you forged his signature." Every syllable landed like a blow, each one stripping away her false confidence. Her lips trembled, her voice breaking. "That's impossible. You can't prove—" Before she could finish, our lawyer cut in, his tone firm and absolute. "It's already proven. Forgery is a crime." The room went so still I could hear my own heartbeat. Sophia's eyes darted between me, the judge, and the damning papers spread out before her. In that instant, I saw it. The realization, the collapse of her carefully built empire of lies. I watched her crumble in slow motion, the arrogance draining from her face until all that was left was panic. Her hands shook as she tried to gather the scattered papers, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final, and his voice carried across the room. "This court recognizes the notarized letter as valid and binding. The inheritance shall be divided equally, as per your father's true wishes." Relief surged through me, but I kept my face composed, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me gloat. Sophia leaned toward me, her whisper frantic, desperate. "Alyssa, please. We're sisters. Don't let them send me to jail." The plea should have stirred something in me, but it didn't. I thought of Dad, of his steady hand guiding me even now, of the promise I had made to him. I straightened my back, letting her words fall away like dust. She wasn't my sister in that moment. She was a thief who had tried to rewrite his legacy. As the courtroom emptied, I stayed seated, watching her flounder as reality pressed in. The same sister who once boasted of having it all now looked small, diminished, undone. My lawyer placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, but my eyes stayed fixed on her. The revenge wasn't in shouting or gloating. It was in the silence, in the weight of truth crushing her, in the consequences she could no longer escape. The ruling hit Sophia harder than any words I could have thrown at her. I stood outside the courthouse, the autumn wind tugging at my coat, watching as she stumbled down the steps beside her lawyer. The woman who had walked in with her chin high and a smirk plastered across her face was gone. In her place was someone stripped bare, her pride shattered, her future uncertain. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, and it was almost satisfying enough to warm the chill in the air. When she finally caught up to me, her voice was small, trembling. "Alyssa, please, we can fix this. We're sisters. Family. She reached for my arm, but I pulled back, the distance between us now deeper than blood. I looked her dead in the eye, my voice cold and steady. You stopped being my sister the day you forged Dad's name. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed him. Actions have consequences, Sophia, and you just met yours. Her lips quivered as the weight of my words settled in, her desperation spilling into tears. But I felt nothing. Not pity, not regret. Only justice. The crowd passing by barely noticed her unraveling, but I did. I memorized it, etched it into the corners of my mind. Because this moment wasn't just about revenge, it was about protecting Dad's legacy, ensuring she could never tarnish it again. The days that followed were a blur of headlines, whispers, and pointed stares. Sophia's name, once polished and admired in our small community, became synonymous with disgrace. Her friends stopped calling, her so-called allies kept their distance, and even the people she once tried to impress crossed the street to avoid her. I watched it all unfold from a distance, not with bitterness, but with a strange calm. The truth had done what I never could. It had dismantled her mask piece by piece. I used my rightful share of the inheritance to settle Dad's affairs, to honor him the way he deserved. The old house he cherished was restored, the cracks in the walls patched, the garden trimmed the way he always liked it. Walking through those rooms, I could almost hear his voice again, steady and warm, telling me I had done the right thing. Every brush of paint, every repaired floorboard felt like stitching his memory back together, stronger than before. And while I built, she unraveled. Legal actions piled against her, debts mounting, reputation shattered. She tried reaching out again, letters, voicemails, half-hearted apologies that rang hollow, but I never answered. The silence between us was my final punishment, harsher than any courtroom sentence, because in that silence, she had to face herself. And I knew that was the one prison she'd never escape. The last time I saw Sophia was outside the courthouse, months later, as she faced another hearing for the forgery charges. She looked smaller somehow, her clothes hanging loosely, her once perfect hair unkempt. Our eyes met across the parking lot, and for a fleeting second, I saw the sister I used to know, the girl who once held my hand on the first day of school, the one who shared secrets and laughter. But that girl was gone, buried beneath the choices she had made. She opened her mouth to speak, but I shook my head before she could. I didn't need more excuses, more empty promises. "This is the path you chose," I said quietly, my voice steady as stone. "And now you have to walk it alone." She flinched, and for the first time, she didn't fight back. She just lowered her gaze and walked away, her heels dragging against the pavement like chains she couldn't shed. I turned and left without looking back, the weight on my shoulders finally lifting. Revenge hadn't been about ruining her. It had been about restoring balance, honoring Dad, and protecting what mattered most. And as I slid into my car, gripping the steering wheel, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't just carrying his legacy anymore. I was creating my own, built not on deceit, but on truth. And that truth would follow me into the next chapter of my life. Months later, I sat on the porch of Dad's house, the wooden boards warm beneath my feet as the late afternoon sun bathed everything in gold. In my hands, I held a framed photo of him, his steady smile, his eyes that always seemed to see more than anyone else. The garden stretched out before me, freshly tended, roses blooming the way he'd loved them. For the first time since his passing, the house didn't feel haunted by loss. It felt alive again, pulsing with memory and promise. I had used part of my inheritance to create something new, a foundation in his name, one that would provide scholarships for young people chasing dreams the way he once encouraged me to chase mine. Each letter of thanks that arrived in the mail reminded me that his influence hadn't ended with his death. It was multiplying, reaching lives far beyond ours. That was his true legacy, and I had made sure it stayed intact. As I traced the edges of the photo, my chest tightened, but the tears that came were softer now, not sharp like before. "Dad," I whispered into the quiet air, "I kept my promise. Your legacy is safe, and she'll never steal from us again." I placed the frame gently on the porch railing, stood, and walked inside. This wasn't just his house anymore. It was my home now. A place where grief had given way to strength, and where I carried both justice and peace in my heart. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and fresh paint, a blend of old comfort and new beginnings. I walked through the hallway, my fingers brushing against the photos on the wall. Snapshots of birthdays, family dinners, even silly moments caught on film. Each frame felt like a reminder that love had once lived here, and now, through me, it still did. The echoes of Sophia's betrayal no longer dominated the space. Instead, it was Dad's laughter, Dad's wisdom, Dad's resilience that filled the air. I paused by his study, the very room where Sophia had once smirked at me across his desk, so sure she had outsmarted me. The desk was clean now, the shelves organized, the bitterness scrubbed away. I sat in his chair, letting the leather cradle me, and realized I wasn't just holding on to his legacy. I was shaping my own. One built on integrity, on keeping promises, on choosing truth over convenience. And I knew he would be proud of that. As the evening settled, I lit a single candle on the desk, its glow soft and steady. It wasn't for mourning anymore. It was for gratitude. Gratitude that I had found my strength, that I had carried him with me through the darkest storm, and that I had walked out the other side whole. Tomorrow there would be more work to do, more steps to take in building the foundation. But tonight, I simply let the peace wash over me, knowing I had finally closed the circle. Later that night, I stepped back onto the porch, the candlelight flickering softly through the window behind me. The air was cool, carrying the scent of roses and freshly cut grass, and above me the stars scattered across the sky like tiny promises. I held the photo of Dad one last time, pressing it close to my chest. "You can rest now," I whispered, my voice steady. "I've got it from here." A calmness spread through me, the kind I hadn't felt in years. For so long, grief had been a weight that threatened to crush me, but now it felt lighter, reshaped into something that gave me strength. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, building, carrying forward a name that could never be forged or stolen. It was mine to honor, mine to protect, mine to grow. As I turned to go inside, I left the porch light glowing, the way Dad always had whenever he was waiting for me to come home. Only this time, it wasn't for him. It was for me. A symbol that no matter how dark the night, I'd always find my way back. Closing the door behind me, I felt whole again, ready for whatever lay ahead. The legacy was safe, and so was I.